Part 1. When Stone First Heard Silence. Welcome to Sleep with Myth. Close your eyes and let the world fade away. Tonight we drift beyond time, where gods dream and stories remember their light. Before it learned to listen, the mountain only knew how to endure. It rose long before names were given to things, before footsteps carved paths into earth, before voices learned how to ask questions of the sky. It was born of pressure and patience, of fire cooled into memory. Wind passed over it without greeting. Rain struck its skin and moved on. Snow rested upon it like a thought that never finished forming. The mountain did not answer. It simply existed. The people who lived in the valleys below called it many things over the centuries. The High One, the Sleeper, the Stone that Watches. But none of those names mattered to the mountain. Names were sounds, and sound passed too quickly to be held. So the mountain remained silent. The first human who sensed something different was a girl named Ellen. She was born during a season when the ground cracked from thirst and the clouds forgot how to gather. Her mother said the mountain watched the birth that night, its peak hidden by stars, unmoving and severe. Her grandmother said the mountain leaned closer, just enough to hear the child breathe. Ellen grew quietly. She was not weak, but she was careful. She did not shout when she laughed. She did not run unless she had somewhere to go. While other children played games that echoed across the valley, Ellen preferred to sit where the fields ended and the slope began, listening to the wind slide through dry grass. She often felt as if something enormous was holding its breath. The village believed the mountain was sacred, but distant. They brought offerings only when drought stretched too long or when storms shattered roofs. They spoke prayers upward and expected nothing back. The mountain had never answered before. It had never punished either. It simply remained. They brought offerings only when drought stretched too long or when storms shattered roofs. They spoke prayers upward and expected nothing back. The mountain had never answered before. It had never punished either. It simply remained. Presence too old to care. Ellen was the only one who felt otherwise. Sometimes, when she pressed her ear to the ground, she thought she heard something beneath the silence. Not a voice, not a sound, but a weight. Like the echo of a word spoken so long ago that only its shape remained. She never told anyone. Some things did not want to be repeated yet. On the night the listening began, the valley was unusually still. No insects sang. No owls called from the trees. Even the river below the village flowed without its usual murmur, as if sound itself had stepped aside. Ellen woke before dawn. She did not know why. There was no dream clinging to her mind, no fear in her chest, only a feeling gentle but insistent that something was waiting. She wrapped her cloak around her shoulders and stepped outside. The mountain loomed above her, dark against a sky pale with stars. Clouds moved slowly around its peak, not touching, not leaving. For the first time in her life, Ellen felt the mountain notice her. The sensation was subtle, not like being seen but like being included. She swallowed. "Hello," she whispered, unsure why the word escaped her lips. The mountain did not respond. But something shifted. Ellen began to climb. The path was not forbidden, but it was rarely used. Shepherds went only so far. No one climbed at night. The mountain was respected through distance. Each step felt heavier than the last, not from exhaustion but from awareness. The air thickened. The stars seemed closer. Ellen's breath sounded too loud, as if she were disturbing something fragile. When she reached a wide stone shelf halfway up the slope, she stopped. The world below her was still asleep. Above her, the mountain waited. She sat, and for the first time she did not try to listen. She simply stayed. Time loosened its grip. Minutes passed or hours, Ellen could not tell. The sky lightened slowly, as if dawn were reluctant to arrive. The stone beneath her felt cool, steady, unchanging. Then she felt it, a vibration, deep and slow, like a heartbeat that did not belong to any living thing. The mountain was not speaking. It was remembering. Ellen pressed her palm against the rock. Her chest tightened, not with fear, but with recognition. Images flickered behind her closed eyes. Fire moving under earth, stone folding upon stone. Ages passing like breaths taken by the world itself. And beneath it all, one constant truth. The mountain had never listened because nothing had ever stayed long enough. Tears gathered in Ellen's eyes without warning. "I'm here," she whispered. Her voice barely sounded at all. The vibration changed. It did not grow louder. It grew clearer. Not words, never words, but attention. Turning inward, as if something vast had finally paused long enough to notice a small, warm presence against its skin. The mountain learned what listening was in that moment. Not hearing, holding. When the sun finally crested the horizon, light spilled across the valley and touched the mountain's face. For the first time in centuries, the stone felt different, softer though it did not move, older though it had not changed, awake in a way it had never been before. Ellen stood slowly. Her legs trembled, but not from weakness, from weight, the kind that settles when something important has been shared. She did not thank the mountain. She did not ask anything of it. She simply placed her forehead against the rock one last time and breathed. "I'll come back," she said, not as a promise, but as a fact. The mountain did not answer, but it listened. Below, the valley stirred. Birds began to sing again, tentative at first, then full. The river found its voice. The air warmed. Nothing looked different. And yet, something had changed. From that day forward, when storms gathered, they broke more gently against the slopes. When drought came, mist clung longer to the stone. When people shouted their fears upward, the echoes returned softer, less sharp. The elders said the mountain was merciful. They were wrong. The mountain had learned something far more dangerous. It had learned how to listen, and it was waiting for Ellen to return. The mountain that learned to listen For many years after the mountain first fell silent, nothing seemed to change. The village still woke with the sun. Sheep still traced their familiar paths along the lower slopes. Smoke still rose in thin, blue threads from stone chimneys at dusk. To anyone passing through, the mountain appeared as it always had, immovable, ancient, indifferent. But those who lived beneath it felt the difference. The mountain no longer echoed. When voices rose too loudly, they did not return. When laughter spilled upward, it vanished instead of bouncing back. Even storms sounded muted, as if thunder hesitated before touching stone. At first, the people thought it was a blessing. "Less noise," the elders said. "The mountain has grown tired," others joked. "Even stones must rest." Only Elon felt uneasy. He noticed it while tending the goats along the old listening path, the narrow trail where his grandmother once taught him to speak softly, where she had pressed her palm to the rock and closed her eyes. Elon called out once, testing the air. "Hello!" The word vanished, not swallowed by distance, not softened by wind. It disappeared as if it had never been spoken. Elon stood still, heart tightening. He pressed his ear to the stone. The mountain was not empty. It was attentive. That night Elon dreamed of weight. Not heaviness that crushed, but weight that waited, like a question set gently on the chest. In the dream, he stood inside the mountain itself. The stone walls curved inward, not trapping him, but sheltering him. There was no voice. There was only listening. Elon tried to speak, but the mountain did not interrupt. It did not respond. It did not judge. It simply remained present, vast and patient, holding every unspoken word. When Elon woke, his pillow was damp with tears he did not remember shedding. The forgetting began slowly. It was not memory that slipped away, but intention. A shepherd climbed too high and could not remember why he had chosen that path. A child climbed the slope and stopped halfway, unsure what she had come to ask for. Prayers ended early, words trailing off into silence. The mountain was listening, and the people were forgetting how to speak. The elders gathered beneath the oldest cedar and argued in circles. "The mountain is angry. No, it is wounded. No, it is only stone. Stone does not care." Elon listened from the edge of the circle, hands clenched. "You taught it not to hear us," one woman finally said. "Or we taught ourselves not to speak." Silence followed. Not the comfortable silence of agreement, the heavy kind. Elon returned alone to the listening path before dawn. The sky was pale, unfinished. The mountain loomed ahead, darker than the world around it, as if it were still night only for itself. He placed his palm against the stone. "I don't know how to speak to you," he said quietly, "but I know how to listen." The wind paused. Elon closed his eyes. He did not ask for rain. He did not ask for protection. He did not ask for answers. He stood. He breathed. He listened. At first, there was nothing. only his own heartbeat, steady and unsure. Then, beneath it, something slower emerged. A rhythm older than breath, older than footsteps. The mountain's pulse. It was not a sound. It was a presence. And in that presence, Elon understood something that no story had ever said aloud. The mountain had never been deaf. It had been overwhelmed. A memory surfaced. His grandmother's voice, cracked with age but steady with truth. Stone holds what we give it. If we give it too much, it will carry the weight until it breaks, or until it learns to set the weight down. The mountain had learned to listen so it could survive. Elon pressed his forehead to the stone. "I will not give you noise," he whispered. "I will give you time." The mountain did not respond, but the silence changed. It softened, and for the first time in many years, a small sound returned. Not an echo, not a voice, but something quieter. A breath from deep within the stone. When Elon descended, the village had not changed. But the mountain had begun to remember itself. And so had he. Far above, unseen by any eyes, a crack no wider than a hand's width opened inside the ancient stone. Not a wound, but a space. A place where listening could become answering. And the mountain waited, not to speak, but to be heard. By the third day, the mountain had changed its silence. It was still vast, still unmoving, still older than memory. But it was no longer empty. Aaron felt it as he climbed higher, following the narrow path that curved like a question along the mountain's spine. Each step no longer sounded like an interruption. His boots did not accuse the stone. Instead, the sound of walking seemed to dissolve into the air, as if the mountain had decided not to answer footsteps at all. Wind passed him without resistance. Clouds drifted lower, brushing the rock like hands searching for warmth. And somewhere beneath all of it, something listened, not to him alone, to everything. Halfway up the slope, Aaron stopped. The world around him grew strangely still, not frozen but attentive. The birds that had followed him earlier perched without sound. Even the wind softened, moving as though it did not wish to interrupt a thought that had not yet finished forming. Aaron closed his eyes. For the first time since he began climbing, he did not try to hear. He waited. The mountain answered not with sound, but with memory. Images rose behind his eyelids, slow and heavy as tectonic movement. He saw fire shaping stone, not violently, but patiently. He saw rain carving paths that would become valleys long after the rain itself was forgotten. He saw countless lives pass along the slopes. Hunters, pilgrims, children, elders, each leaving something behind without knowing it. Fear, hope, names never spoken again. The mountain had carried them all, and never spoken of them. Until now. Aaron opened his eyes. The path ahead shimmered faintly, not with light, but with depth, as if the mountain were folding inward, revealing layers usually hidden beneath skin and stone. "You have been holding this for too long," Aaron whispered, though he did not know who he was speaking to. The air thickened. A pressure settled around his chest, not painful, but heavy with meaning. Then came the echo, not a voice, By the third day, the mountain had changed its silence. It was still vast, still unmoving, still older than memory, but it was no longer empty. Aaron felt it as he climbed higher, following the narrow path that curved like a question along the mountain's spine. Each step no longer sounded like an interruption. His boots did not accuse the stone. Instead, the sound of walking seemed to dissolve into the air, as if the mountain had decided not to answer footsteps at all. Wind passed him without resistance. Clouds drifted lower, brushing the rock like hands searching for warmth. And somewhere beneath all of it, something listened. Not to him alone, to everything. Halfway up the slope, Aaron stopped. The world around him grew strangely still, not frozen but attentive. The birds that had followed him earlier perched without sound. Even the wind softened, moving as though it did not wish to interrupt a thought that had not yet finished forming. Aaron closed his eyes. For the first time since he began climbing, he did not try to hear. He waited. The mountain answered not with sound, but with memory. Images rose behind his eyelids, slow and heavy as tectonic movement. He saw fire shaping stone, not violently, but patiently. He saw rain carving paths that would become valleys long after the rain itself was forgotten. He saw countless lives pass along the slopes. Hunters, pilgrims, children, elders, each leaving something behind without knowing it. Fear, hope, names never spoken again. The mountain had carried them all, and never spoken of them. Until now, Aaron opened his eyes. The path ahead shimmered faintly, not with light, but with depth, as if the mountain were folding inward, revealing layers usually hidden beneath skin and stone. "You have been holding this for too long," Aaron whispered, though he did not know who he was speaking to. The air thickened. A pressure settled around his chest, not painful, but heavy with meaning. Then came the echo, not a voice, an understanding. Listening is not silence, the mountains seemed to say. It is weight accepted without resistance. Aaron sank to his knees. He understood then that the mountain had never been mute. It had simply chosen not to speak, because no one had stayed long enough to hear what speaking actually required. Time passed strangely after that. Aaron did not know how long he knelt there, minutes, hours, or something outside counting. The sky shifted colors slowly, but the mountain did not hurry him. When he finally stood, something inside him had changed. Not strengthened, softened. He no longer felt the need to reach the summit. The mountain did not need conquering. It needed companionship. As Aaron turned to continue upward, he noticed something new. The rock beside the path bore faint markings, not carved, not drawn, formed, as if the stone itself had exhaled symbols it had been holding for centuries. Not words, stories without edges. Aaron traced one with his fingers. The stone was warm, and for the first time the mountain responded not with silence but with presence. It had begun to listen, and it had begun to answer, not with sound, but with shared stillness. Ahead the summit waited, not as a destination, but as a meeting place. Part 4: The silence that answered back. The mountain did not speak. At least not in any way Arel had been taught to recognize as speech. After the third night, When the tremor beneath the stones had faded into a deep, patient stillness, Arel realized something unsettling. The mountain was not waiting for him to ask better questions. It was waiting for him to stop asking altogether. He remained at the high ridge where wind cut clean through breath and thought. Below him, valleys lay folded like dark cloth. Above him, the sky carried no stars, only a muted glow, as if light itself had chosen to rest. Arel sat. He did not pray. He did not call. He did not think. First, his mind rebelled. Memories surfaced uninvited. His village, voices, the ache of leaving, the fear that he had misunderstood everything. Time stretched thin, each moment scraping against the next. Then something shifted, not outside him, inside. The noise loosened, and in that quiet, the mountain changed. Not in shape, not in sound, in attention. Arel felt it the way one feels eyes upon their back without turning around. The stone beneath him seemed no longer indifferent. It did not warm or move, but it held. He placed his palm against the ground. The rock was cold, ancient, unyielding. Yet beneath the cold there was a slow rhythm, so deep it barely deserved the name rhythm at all. A pulse measured not in seconds, but in eras. The mountain was listening, and for the first time, Arel understood what listening meant to something that could not move, could not leave, could not escape. Listening was not curiosity. It was endurance. A thought rose in him, not spoken, not formed as words. What have you heard? The silence thickened. The mountain did not speak again. Not with thunder. Not with dreams. Not even with the deep, wordless pressure that had once pressed against Arel's chest like a second heart. Instead, it listened. First, Arel thought something had gone wrong. He had returned to the village carrying no sign, no mark, no gift that could be shown. His hands were empty. His voice felt unchanged. When people asked what the mountain had said, he found himself unable to answer. Not because the memory had faded, but because words felt too sharp for what remained. The elders watched him carefully. They expected prophecy. They expected warning. They expected the mountains will carved into language. But Arel offered none of it. And slowly the village learned to sit with that silence. Seasons turned. Snow came early that year, but gently, as if placed rather than dropped. The winds that once screamed along the ridges softened into long breaths that moved through stone and pine alike. Hunters noticed the paths of animals shift, not away from the mountain, but around it like respect made visible. The earth did not crack. The sky did not darken. Nothing dramatic happened. And yet, everything felt steadier. Arel spent more time walking the lower slopes, not climbing, not seeking. He placed his palm against the rock often, feeling not power, but presence. The mountain was no longer something above him. It was something with him. One evening, as dusk folded the world into blue, Arel sat where the path ended and listened. Not for a voice, but for balance. He heard small things then. Pebbles settling, roots shifting, snow melting drop by patient drop beneath the surface. He realized the mountain had always listened like this. It was the world that had been too loud. The dream came late in the year, not summoned, not expected. Arel stood in a wide place of stone and sky, where the mountain rose not as a wall, but as a vast curve, like a back beneath a sleeping world. No figure appeared, no presence pressed in, only stillness, and within that stillness understanding. The mountain had never wanted to be obeyed. It had never wanted offerings or fear. It had learned to listen because it had been listened to. That was the exchange. Arel woke before dawn with tears on his face and no sorrow in his chest. In the years that followed, people came to the mountain differently. Not with demands. Not with questions shouted into the sky. They came and sat. They spoke softly or not at all. They brought children who learned to be quiet without being afraid. When grief came, they placed it on the stone and stayed until it felt lighter. Not gone, but held. The mountain did not answer, but it did not turn away. And somehow that was enough. Arel grew older. His hair silvered like frost along shadowed rock. His steps slowed, yet his listening deepened. When he finally returned to the mountain one last time, it was not to climb. It was to rest. He lay against the stone as the sun set, feeling the warmth fade in long, even breaths. The mountain held him as it held rivers, roots, bones of time. No words passed between them, only listening. Long after Arel was gone, the mountain remained, still vast, still silent. But those who came near it felt something different now. Not awe sharpened into fear, but calm widened into belonging. And somewhere deep within stone and sky, the mountain continued what it had learned at last. To listen without needing to speak. To hold without needing to rule. To be present without needing to move. Thank you for listening to Sleep with Myth.